Okay, and I'm gonna start sharing my screen. As you can see, it's a bit slow, but it seems like it's working again. Okay, so I think now you should be able to all see my screen. Um, I would say like this session is meant a little bit as an interactive session. So I'll leave enough questions from your side at the end. If there's anything urgent that you feel like you need to ask right away, please feel free to do that. I'll make sure that I also see you. Otherwise, if I don't see you right away, please feel free to start talking. I have your pictures here, so in case you're raising your hand, I can see that as well. So today's session is really about giving you a little bit of an update on the revised criteria and the revised processes, so you have a bit of an understanding of what is it that actually has changed in our standard. All of you know Green Key by now. This is just like some general slides that I added in case someone is not completely aware of what we do. I added them to my slides today, but can you give me a bit of a raise of hand if it makes sense for me to go into detail with that? I also will talk a little bit about the Foundation for Environmental Education. I don't know if you're aware of what is the background organization of our company. Can you give me a bit of a raise of hand if you all are aware of that, and then I can either go through it a little bit faster or I'll take a little bit more time on that.
Hi, Claudia. I
Can
think it'd be good if you do just give a bit of background context because I think it's been a while since we originally launched our partnership, so there might be a few people on the call that are unfamiliar with Green Key.
Perfect. Then I do that, and it was good that I added these slides, I guess. So in general, as Green Key, we are the leading international certification program for tourism establishments. We are soon reaching the 9,000 mark of certified establishments around the world. So we are present in more than 90 countries globally. Besides hotels and hostels, which is really our main category of tourism establishments, we actually certify six different categories. So hotels and hostels is the biggest one, but we are also certified, for example, independent restaurants, conference centers, attractions, museums, campsites and holiday parks and small accommodations. So that's just for your information that actually our portfolio is a bit bigger than only hotels and hostels, but of course this is what we're very well known for because it's also our biggest category of certified establishments. The entity behind Green Key is the Foundation for Environmental Education. So you will see that many of our criteria are actually also focusing on a little bit on raising awareness and educating the different stakeholders that are involved in the tourism establishment. So that includes the staff, that includes the tourists, but also other stakeholders such as the suppliers. So the reason for that, or one of the main reasons for that, is that we are part of the Foundation for Environmental Education, in short, FEE. So if you ever hear about FEE contacting you, or and not necessarily only Green Key, that is the reason why. FEE is a global non-profit organization. We are registered in the UK, but we operate globally. And in general, FEE has more than 100 members. Our members are also NGOs that work in the different countries and that basically operationally work with our different programs. We have a total of six programs that we work with. Two are in the tourism sector, that would be Green Key, of course, and Blue Flag. Blue Flag is another certification program for the tourism industry. It's an environmental award for sustainable beaches, marinas, and tourism boats. So it's very well known in the rather southern regions of the world. So it's very big in, for example, Spain and Portugal and Greece. And then we also have four programs that really focus on the educational sector. So we have Eco Schools and Eco Campus. which are programs that work on greening curricula, and they both use a participatory approach where students become part of forming a green committee and basically developing the green strategy of the school so that kids already from a very young age learn about sustainability. We then have two other programs, LEAF, so learning about forests and ecosystems, and Young Reporters for the Environment, which is a youth leadership program where we do journalistic competitions with youth and where they basically get a voice for the environment. Sometimes we do projects where we cooperate between programs. So, for example, 2 years ago, we had a project in Cambodia where I was there to teach at a tourism school in a region in the north of Cambodia. And of course, that's a great opportunity, for example, for us to cooperate between eco schools and Green Key, because of course, the next generation of tourism professionals are also really important for the sustainability agenda of our organization. So that's a little bit of background of who we are. Our work mainly happens through our national operators. We have national operators in 55 countries. But if you have seen my slides before, we actually operate in way more countries than that. The reason why this is possible is because Green Key International, so we here in the head office also function as a national operator for all the establishments where we don't have a national operator yet. So we are now responsible for more than 40 countries. So when in doubt, if you don't see the flag of your responsibility here, then Green Key International will be the one that will probably take care of these properties, or otherwise we will refer you to the corresponding national operator. You can find the list of national offices, of course, on our website. And we are spreading quite well around the world. 4 years ago, the map was not as diverse. Of course, it's still very Eurocentric. The reason for that is that we were founded in Denmark by the Danish Restaurant and Hotel Association. So that's why it started in Europe. But Mexico, for example, was one of the first national operators to join. So that's why Mexico is also a country where Green Key is very strong. And then a little bit about the why. I mean, you should be aware of that. Of course, we observe and we're doing more and more studies on that also with our internal benchmarking system that, of course, customers care. I think that's really important for our hotels and probably also for your properties that you work with, because we get asked why should we care, why should we care, but rather why should we join a certification program, what are the benefits for us. And besides the consumer side, which we know that for our tourism establishments, the consumer is very important. Sometimes there is the narrative that sustainability means reducing customer satisfaction. So it's important that we also talk with them about the why, and that actually there is studies, and we're trying to research more on that as well, that show that it's a little bit of the opposite as well, that actually in order to hit the nerve with specific customers, it's actually important to not only claim that you're sustainable, but actually have that substantiated. That's the customer side. Now with the Green Claims Directive, with the MCO directive, it will be also important from a legislative point of view. And a little bit more about why Green Key. On the one hand, we work together with partners like you are, but we also work together with online travel agencies such as Booking.com. You probably know that Booking.com has now the possibility to filter establishments, hotels based on, for example, sustainability certifications. So that is, of course, a great selling point for our establishments at the beginning. It still will give them a certain higher visibility when they're Green Key certified. or certified with any certification on that matter. The reality is, if we look at it, we have about 9,000 certified establishments. If we look at the whole portfolio of certification programs in the tourism industry out there, there's around 25,000 to 30,000 certified establishments. You're probably aware of how many tourism establishments that are out there in generally. There's millions of them. So percentage-wise, it's a very small percentage. So there's still a lot of possibilities to improve in that area. And that means, first of all, competition is super important. We don't believe we can do it all, and we also don't need to. It's really good that there's different certification programs out there. That's the one side. At the same side, in certain countries, establishments that are certified with certification programs are still early adopters. It happens to us now even more than it in the past, that we enter new countries on a weekly basis, which is of course great developments. And those that are the first ones have a significantly higher visibility in terms of the booking platforms, for example. As I said, Green Key is part of a non-governmental organization, so we try to still have a inclusive cost model, meaning that we want to be available also for small establishments, not only on the financial resource side, but also on the human resource side, because of course joining a certification process takes time. Collecting the documents, making sure that everything is prepared. It is not a process that they just tick the boxes and they're done with it. It is an intensive, also labor-intensive process. So we try on one hand, of course, on the cost side to be inclusive. On the other hand, also with our criteria. One of the things that this EMCO directive also did to us as a program is that it did make the way we operate more complex. That's one of the things we're going to talk about today. It is increasing a little bit of the complexity, but at the same time, we are still it's still our mission to make sure that we support the establishments and you as much as possible in this process. The other side, with the labor-intensive side, how we have set up our criteria, and that's also something that is often mentioned as why establishments really like to work with us, is that most of our criteria, we try to set them up that they are as practical as possible. So rather than having like 5 documents that they need to submit for specific criteria, we try to focus on actions. Of course, that is not possible for all criteria, because for certain criteria, we're trying to think, okay, what is the evidence that we can have for that criterion? And for some of them, it was simply not possible to make it an action, but it had to be a document that proves that something is in place. But the majority, we did try to see, is there an option to rather have it an action, like a food waste reduction action, rather than a plan, and things like that. And then, of course, we are an international standard. On the one hand, that is sometimes a little bit the challenge that we face, because as we all know, sustainability standards are different around the world. So as a global program, we need to make sure that we set up a standard that is implementable by everyone, but at the same time make a sustainability difference, also in countries where per legislation a lot is already covered. And why we are quite successful, I would say, and that I said that before, is because we also have our national operators that can give guidance in the local language and adapt a little bit to the national context. Any questions to this first part, or should I just continue with the main topic of today? All good?
Good to continue from my side.
I'll continue then with why we're here today. So we updated our criteria. This is a general process that we go through every 5 years, in order to make sure that we are aligned with industry needs, that we are not falling behind when it comes to maybe research that 5 years ago something was potentially seen as sustainable. Maybe today, research has shown that it's not so sustainable after all, or maybe the impact that we were trying to have is not as big because of whatever reason. So in general, this is a process that we do every 5 years. As part of the EMCO directive that is taking effect in September, we additionally now followed our criteria revision process according to ISO 17065. So that means that the way we have written our criteria are a little bit different in terms of the wording that we can use. And the process that you can see here is that we have followed the ISO standard in terms of how such a criteria revision process needs to be set up. This is why it has taken us about 1.5 years to actually set up the new criteria. We have done, of course, a review of our criteria categories and definitions. We had extensive consultation with external stakeholders and experts in different areas. For example, experts in animal welfare or cleaning products that have given input on our criteria. We also invited different partners from the industry to give feedback to our criteria. And actually anyone that was interested could give feedback as part of the external hearing phase. In general, we had formed 6 working parties on thematic clusters, as some of them focusing on water and washing and cleaning, others on biodiversity, others on waste and food and beverage. So there was 6 working parties with our national operators. So national offices around the world has been formed. We had more than 60 meetings during this time. Only with the internal group, we had additional meetings with external stakeholders, industry experts to give feedback on specific criteria. We made sure that we have a global coverage because of that issue that I mentioned earlier, that there is differences around the world. I've been working with Green-key for a while, but there is almost no case. There's always a new case that maybe we haven't experienced before. The beauty of the tourism industry, and sometimes what makes our work very interesting, is that it's very diverse. There's a lot of possibilities of additional services that could be part of a hotel, for example. So these were all thought processes that we also had in terms of the scope of our certification. When can you apply for Green-key? Or for example, some hotels have a bowling area that is part of the hotel. Do we certify that? It was very clear for us that that is not part of the main Green-key scope because it's not our area of expertise, but we cannot ignore that there's a bowling area in the establishment. So these are decisions that you need to have, and you're probably aware how many possibilities that there are in terms of services that are within a tourism establishment. And also mixed-use buildings. Also, for example, a restaurant that has 2 rooms. How do we certify that in terms of categories? So a lot of discussions, a lot of interesting evaluations of what makes sense for our standard. We consulted around 70 organizations, as I said, individual hotels, hotel chains, product solution providers, NGOs, research institutions, auditors, consultants, public authorities. And it was about more than 100 experts that were involved in this process, only talking about external experts here. We then ended up with 4 core documents, which are the Green-key Criteria Catalog, which takes effect on the 1st of October 2026. Then the establishment category definitions, that's a little bit what I talked about now. When is an establishment considered as hotel and hostel? When is it considered a small accommodation? The scope, so we were also very clear of what is not part of the Green-key scope. For us, it was very clear that, for example, beaches are not part of Green-key because that's Blue Flag that works on that. But of course, there is hotels that have a private beach. But that is not part of the Green-key scope itself. Just an example for that. We also formulated a glossary that defines audit methods, that defines a little bit everything that could be needed to, where additional information could be needed for you, but especially for the establishments as well. We then did a comparative analysis of the previous criteria and the new criteria. So all documents that are first of all available on our website, and I'm happy to share them separately with you as well. And of course, there's still the support and contact with our Green Key teams, both the national one, but also international one. We also formulated a pre-screening, or we created a pre-screening form that is now part of the new certification process, that before starting the application, the establishment needs to fill out this pre-screening form. It is a mandatory first step. It's actually quite fast. We did a bit of testing. It should be around 7 to maximum 12 minutes that an establishment needs to fill this out. It collects key operational information. It will also give the establishment a little bit of an answer already. What category do I belong to? Am I within the Green Key scope or without the scope? So it's basically a step-by-step questionnaire asking them, do you have a pool? Do you operate? Are you open for the public? So all the questions that are essential for us to determine if they can be, if they even can start the application process. Sometimes in the past, it happened that the establishment wasn't 100% honest at the beginning. They said, oh yeah, I can apply, but then in the process we realized actually that because of whatever reason they are maybe not open completely, they are renovating a part, that actually they cannot apply for Green Key right now. We had to stop the process. It's of course not ideal, so that pre-screening form should help with that as well, and should allow that the establishment already has a bit of an overview. I'll share these slides with you afterwards, of course, so no need to scan the QR code now, just like the documents that I showed before as well. We did a little bit of update of the different sections. So instead of previously having 13 sections, we now have 7 main sections with subsection. The reason why we did that is we wanted to make sure that there is clarity in terms of our sections. One of the ISO requirements, for example, is that it needs to be very clear for the establishment to know where to find what topic and which criteria. So that is why we did a little bit of a restructuring as well of our sections in itself. It is still ordered according to the old system with the imperative criteria first and then the guideline criteria. One of the major changes is that we are moving from a 1-year certification period to a 2-year certification period. The reason for that is that according to ISO, in between certification audits, basically, there needs to be surveillance activities happening. I'm going to talk about that later when it comes to the process updates, but it's basically additional off-site checks that need to happen between certification period. If we have a 1-year standard, there would be very little time for the establishment to not work on the certificate. So that is the main reason why we extended our certification period, and it's now valid for 2 years. In terms of the guideline criteria, in the past, the establishment needed to conform. Down here, you can see the old version with 5% of guideline criteria every year extra. It actually stayed the same. It looks different, but the reality is that it stayed the same because of the change to the 2-year certification period. So in the past, it was 5% per year. Now it's 10% per certification period, being 2 years. So it's still 5%. It just looks a little bit different because of this change of 2 years. There is a little bit of a rule or regulation that we came up for the transition period. So the transition period is the period where all establishments move from the old to the new criteria. And as we understand that, because the criteria have changed, the processes have changed, it might be a bit difficult for the establishment to go to the next higher percentage of guideline criteria in that transition period. Actually, during the transition period alone, they can move to the next lower percentage. So if they, in the old process, were due for 15% of guideline criteria in the new process, they would move down to the next lower one, which is 10%. If I'm not explaining this properly, let me know. But the idea is that we understand that things are changing, so also criteria are changing, guideline criteria are changing. So we understand that probably it might be difficult for some of them to jump to the next higher guideline criteria already, because they will anyways have to change some. So for the transition period, it's basically the next lower percentage. If they, for example, had 10% that they needed to do, the next lower would be 0%. So that also applies in that case. We also did
Claudia,
yeah.
can I just ask how many criteria are imperative
There is, do I have that?
for a hotel?
I don't know if I have done the numbers here. The amount of criteria generally have lowered a little bit. I think in the old standard it was 150 in total and 139, and now it's 139 criteria. Approximately half of those are imperative.
Great, thanks.
I don't have the exact number unfortunately in my head, but I can look it up really quick afterwards.
Thanks. Yeah, that would be a good number just to share.
Yes, yes. Then we did a little bit of a structuring of the explanatory notes. They are now divided into relevance. So why is it important, the criterion, expectations for implementation? So what does the establishment need to do? And then audit evidence, which specifies exactly what the auditor will check during the audit. That helps our auditors, but it also helps the establishments to understand what will happen during the audit for that specific criterion. There is a little bit of a note on national adaptations. Some of our national operators are still able to slightly increase the criteria because of what I mentioned before. In some countries, something may already be national legislation or already quite high in terms of national legislation, so they might want to increase the standard. This is all information that you can find in the international version of the criteria catalog. So there will be a little info on the left of the criterion if there is a national adaptation, and then it's explaining exactly what it is with the other info. For example, this is a criterion that is guideline internationally, but our national operator in Belgium made the criterion imperative. So that's just for your information. All this is now in the international catalog, so it's even easier to find it. Then there is different kinds of changes. All this information can be found in the comparison document. There's minor changes. Very often the changes we made are more explanation in the explanatory notes. So it's hopefully almost bulletproof in terms of clarity for the establishments, what they need to do. I'm sure we will still get a lot of questions, but we try to improve or increase the amount of explanations that we added. At the same time, we needed to balance to not overdo it because we don't want a 200-page document. Then there's moderate changes, maybe changes to the audit process, and major changes. For example, sometimes we've removed the criterion because actually we realized that it's not implementable at all, which means we don't have an impact because no one, for example, a guideline criterion, because no one is choosing it. Or it's something that we realized that actually does not have a big impact in terms of sustainability. Sometimes we have merged criteria, and that would be, or we have added new criteria, that would be rather major changes that you can find in the comparison document. We also did a little bit of a increased focus on social sustainability criteria, increased focus on animal welfare, and we introduced a few new criteria. It's not part of my presentation to go into detail with those because it would not work in our timing or the amount of time we have. There is this comparison file. If you have questions afterwards, please feel free to write me and send me a message regarding this. What's next? There is this transition period. There is, of course, new applicants. We already recommend now that they apply for the new criteria. They can already start the process doing that. They may apply for the previous criteria, but maybe you have worked with establishments already and also realized that it's not something that is done in a month. It takes time to work on these criteria. So that is why we already now recommend rather going for the new criteria, because there's not so much time left until the 27th of September. For reapplicants, it depends a little bit on when their certificate expires. In general, if their certificate is expiring before June or July, they can go for the old criteria. Of course, they need to make sure that they submit everything in time. If their certificate expires September, October, we recommend that they either go for the new criteria or they move their certification process to the front, so like significantly, so they also manage to get recertified in time. Even the ones that have a certificate expiring in December, they can also move it to the front. They will lose a few months of being certified, but some of our establishments want to be certified with the old criteria rather than working on the new ones. Of course, once they start with the new ones, especially new applicants, they will also be certified for 2 years instead of 1 year. There might be slight differences of, there are slight differences of these transition deadlines depending on the country. You can gladly let me know. We have created an overview, a file where you can see the different transition deadlines for the different countries, Green Key countries as well. That's a little bit about the criteria. Now I have a few more slides about the process, and then we can use the rest of the time for questions from your side. So in regards to the process, why did we even do that? It wasn't just that we woke up one day and we thought we wanted to create a lot of work for everyone in our office, but also for everyone else involved. It's actually, we want to and have to align with EU rules on sustainability labels. The whole criteria process, as I said, would have been something we do anyways every 5 years. But in addition to the updating criteria, we have also reviewed all our processes, created manuals, made sure that all our processes are now also aligned with ISO 17065. And what is changing specifically? Before there was, we always had second-party auditing. In the past, however, what was the case is that national operator could have done an audit in some countries, and a national jury, so that was the third party, then was taking the decision. Or in other countries like Green Key International, it was an independent auditor that did the audit and taking the decision. Now, from October on, it will always be an independent auditor that visits the establishment and an independent certification body that makes the final decision. So there is a new entity that is being added to the process. What does it mean? There's an even more independent and transparent certification. There is a stronger international recognition, of course, following EU regulations. It's really important also for our recognition. And the Green Key program quality stays the same. A lot of the things that are required by ISO, luckily, we already had in place. But of course, it's also a matter of formalizing everything. And what also stays the same is your contact with Green Key and, of course, the commitment of you, but also your establishments to sustainability. Our goal is really to make Green Key even more credible, reliable, and recognized worldwide. So what is changing in the process particularly is really that we have added, or we had to add another entity, the certification body. The establishment still conforms with the Green Key criteria. Green Key is still the one developing, administering the Green Key program and providing general support. The auditor is the one checking conformity with Green Key criteria during the on-site audit. As I said, in many countries, that was already the case before. In 90% of our establishments, actually, that was already the case before. And now there's another entity which reviews and takes the decision upon certification. This entity also deals with complaints. For example, if the establishment does not agree with the outcome from the audit, then this certification body also deals with these complaints. There is a policy on our website where this is defined as well. From the main steps, there is first the pre-screening and application phase. I'm going to go into detail: on-site, certification, audit, review and decision, and surveillance activities during certification. So to start with the first phase, as part of the first phase, Greenkey will evaluate the eligibility of the applicant establishment. It's a little bit what I showed before with the pre-screening. We assess the location of the establishment, the appropriate contact, national operator, for example, the applicable categories, any risk associated with the on-site audit, and if the establishment is open, because there's a requirement that 50%, no more than 50% of the establishment can be closed for renovation in order for them to be eligible. Then, as a next step, the Greenkey team sends information to the applicant establishments about the process, the criteria, the application form, the certification agreement, costs, and support material. We then receive the information. We do a completeness check of this information. So, are they ready basically for the audit? The establishment still receives support material, general support material. We are still planning to have support webinars in general with establishments. But what changed a little bit is that we cannot have as much this one-on-one detailed telling the establishment, this is exactly how you need to change your document in order to conform. We can still inform them, this is how the document needs to look like. That's a little bit changing here. That would rather fall into consultancy. There is consultants for that. But Greenkey will still check the readiness of the application, and then the auditor is being assigned. The certification body is the one that assigns and selects the auditor based on which auditor has the needed competence, which auditor is available, which auditor is the most feasible in terms of costs and distance to the establishment between applicant and auditor. The certification body then furthermore assesses, can there be a pooling of audits, so several audits organized together. Then the assigned auditor will contact the applicant establishment to organize the time for the on-site audit. That was the same before. The auditor and establishment then receive the applicant material, and the applicant will pay the auditor cost to the certification body. So the auditing fee is now also handled by the certification body to ensure even further independence between the applicant plus the auditor plus Greenkey. And then the auditor performs the on-site audit. Opening meeting is done, document verification, visual inspection, interviews, and closing meeting. This is pretty much the same than before. Now it's just formalized. The auditor then prepares the audit report in a standard format, and also needs to work with the applicant when it comes to non-conformities. If there's 3 scenarios that can happen. If full conformity is reached, the certification body receives that information and they can have the final review and decision. If there are non-conformities from 1 to 5 criteria, the establishment must, of course, rectify those non-conformities and cannot be certified at that point and send proof. And the certification body then receives everything for the final review and decision. If there's more than 5 non-conformity, the establishment also needs to rectify those. There is, however, a follow-up audit organized, and with the same auditor that has done the first audit, and then the certification body receives the information for final review. So the last step is always the same, as you can see. Finally, review and decision. The CB then makes the decision yes or no to certification. Greenkey then shares the information about the final decision. Of course, if the information is yes, including the Greenkey certificate, the audit report, the certification agreement, there's also possibility to fill out a survey regarding the satisfaction of the audit, information about requirements during the certification period, That's basically my next slide. And information about suspension, when could the certificate be withdrawn, and complaints and appeals. And then finally, the last part is the requirements during the certification period. Remember that now it's 2 years. So after 8 to 14 months, Green Key contacts the establishment and they need to deliver documents of selected criteria. This is mainly criteria that need continuous tracking, like the energy consumption, the water consumption. So it's a few selected criteria that are checked within those 8 to 14 months after the first, after the decision. Green Key again collects the material. It's then evaluated by the certification body. There's no auditor involved when it comes to the surveillance activities. If there's full conformity, the certification continues. If there are non-conformities, the certification is suspended until full conformity is reached. Because of course, if they don't conform with our criteria, we can't claim that they can be certified with Green Key. And then finally, a little bit for the transition period, first-time applicant, they, as I said, ensure conformity with the new criteria. They will have an on-site certification audit. It's approved by the certification body. Of course, everything after this deadline of 27th of September, and they're then certified for 2 years. For re-applicants that have an on-site audit, it's the same procedure. So if they're due for an on-site audit, they will also be following the new guideline criteria plus the new percentage model of, the new imperative criteria, my bad, plus the new percentage model for guideline criteria, and they're certified for 2 years. If they're due for an off-site audit, they are basically entering the surveillance activities. So they have to prove specific criteria, have to submit documents for the selected criteria, but then they're only certified for 1 year, and then they enter the on-site audit process. Regarding financing, the Green Key levy annual one is the first invoice that they will receive. It's the same than before. And they will also receive an invoice from the certification body, including the auditor's fee, the travel expenses, and the certification body fee. So there's 2 invoices. So that has changed a little bit in terms of the invoicing process. That is it from my side. And as unfortunately my computer did not work at the beginning, we have still quite some time for questions. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. And if you have any questions, please use the time now. I'm here to answer whatever you need.
Claudia, what's the general process time frame from literally trying to onboard a new partner? So the application process from start to finish for a new applicant.
For new applicant, I have a table that I'm happy to share with you. In general, we calculate approximately 6 months for the main process. There is a requirement that from the moment they apply until they are certified, maximum a year can pass. Until basically the audit happens. Sorry, from the moment they apply until the audit happens, maximum a year can pass. So more than that, there is a lot of criteria where they need to show a certain data. So then we kind of would have to restart the process. But it's approximately 6 months. That is definitely what we expect that is required for them to get certified. Some of them are a little bit faster, some of them are of course slower. Sometimes they get stuck on one criterion. And then it takes a little bit more time.
Great, thank you.
But we have a more clear overview. We have a table that we now developed as well, where actually the different phases are also specified. So I'll have a look and I can share it as part of my follow-up email together with the presentation and the recording. Any other questions?
Thanks, Claudia. I've just got one quick question. When it comes to the payment of the fees, is the establishment expected to pay the Green Key levy upon registration? and then they would have an additional fee for the audit, or is it after they've achieved certification?
Yes, so the payment of the fee happens after before basically, and then the payment of the certification body fee and auditor expenses happens after that has happened. So there's two payments that will happen.
That's
And
great.
it's still a yearly fee, although it's a 2-year period, but it's still an annual certification fee. Levy, sorry.
Great, thank you.
Well, I would have two questions if possible. One is following the fees. Actually, I appreciate that you may not reveal all the information, etc. But it's quite natural. I'm working for contracting, so we're always talking about money with our hoteliers. What is the fee? What's the levy for roughly for a property?
Right now, the fee is 1,125 euros. Right now, the audit fee is 525 euros, which is paid during the on-site years. There is an additional certification body fee, which we do not have the exact information yet. It's roughly around 100, 200 euros potentially, but don't hang me up on those numbers yet
No
because
worries.
the whole part of the certification body is still finalized, so we don't have that information yet. But I will be happy to share that with you once we have that. Our general fees, they do increase, of course, on a yearly basis. So the fees I'm telling you about levy and audit are the costs that we have now. On the international hotels, our national operators have different fees depending on the country. Some of them have lower fees because maybe living costs in the country are lower. Some of them have higher fees, for example, in the Middle East, because living costs are higher as well. So it's not a global fee. That's just roughly so you have a bit of an understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very. To be fair, like I'm positively surprised. It's not a massive amount. So because obviously when we discussing this with the hoteliers,
Yes.
knowing roughly what's the cost, we can encourage the hoteliers that at a smaller, relatively small cost, they could have that exposure, etc. So yeah, it's good to understand that. And second question, not trying to be tricky, but do you have any data? Because you mentioned the Booking.com has now the new filter where you can search for sustainable properties and certified properties. Do you have any data from Booking.com how often customers actually use this filter? Do we have any information? Because like it would be interesting to see as well, should we have that kind of filter on our website, how successful that would be? Because sometimes it's better to avoid information or not to promise something that is actually not working that well. So
I think it's a very nice thought. I'm gonna write it down. I unfortunately
mhm.
don't have any data from Booking.com, but Booking.com is one of our partners, so I think it could be a
Yeah,
very great data point to have for sure. I'll
yeah,
write it down to see if I can get something there.
no worries. Okay, that's all from my side. Thank you very much. The presentation was great, by the way.
I'm glad.
Thank you.
I hope
You deliver very
I
well.
made
Yeah.
up for the 10 minutes that
Yeah.
I let you wait.
Wish to have this presentation skills. Yeah, seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I can see there was a question. Yes, I will make sure that you get the presentation plus the recording, plus I also make sure that you get that table. And by the way, the current costs are also available on our website, so I'm happy to share a link to that as well. I always feel like when there's little questions, maybe I have explained very well. So that's what I'm at least telling myself.
I think that must be the case, Claudia.
Yes. Otherwise, there is I'm an email away. So of course, if there's something that you would like to know afterwards that you have realized you didn't get a chance to ask, please feel free to write me. Okay, I think if there's no other questions, then I think we can end the meeting. still almost punctual. Thank you so much. My apologies again for the delay from my side. And yeah, let me know if there is anything, if you need a follow up also with your clients, if you need a little bit of an expert on the Green Key, of course, that should join any meetings that you have with clients. Also, if you have like certain groups, we are happy to do that and organize that. Also, our national operators, of course, are very responsive and there if you need any support.
Thanks very
That's
much,
great.
Nadia. It's great.
Thank you. It was a pleasure
Thank
to meet you,
you.
and I wish
Thank
you a
you.
great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.